Welcome to our deep dive into Stefan Zweig's The World of Yesterday.
Oh, fascinating choice.
It really is.
It's so much more than just a memoir, though, right?
Right.
It's like a window into this Europe that's just on the brink of just massive change.
Huge change, yeah.
We're talking like political upheaval.
Oh, yeah.
Just this incredible cultural energy, and then ultimately the shadow of fascism kind of falling over everything.
Falling across everything.
Yeah.
And it's really remarkable how he captures that feeling of constant change.
Oh, absolutely.
Of just, old certainties just crumbling around him.
Yeah, he talks about how his generation had security. Like, the word was just struck from their vocabulary. They just didn't have that anymore.
It's a powerful image.
Yeah.
What events, I guess, in his life or in the world around him kind of led to this feeling that the ground was constantly shifting beneath his feet?
Well, he paints this picture of early 20th century Europe as this really fascinating mix of like grandeur and anxiety.
Okay.
Right. So you have on the one hand this like this incredible flourishing of art and science to technology, but at the same time there's this underlying current of uncertainty, like these old empires are starting to crumble.
Right.
And there's these new ideologies kind of bubbling up, And he describes this one event that I think really captures that feeling of shifting ground.
Okay.
He talks about watching the rise of the Social Democratic Party in Austria.
Okay.
And even something like a May Day demonstration, which, we might see as fairly normal today, was met with fear by the middle class back then. They were expecting violence.
Wow.
Chaos in the streets. And
it's so interesting how something that we would see as a common occurrence now was so radical then.
Absolutely. It was a sign of the times,
Yep.
The workers were becoming more organized, more powerful, and it signaled this shift in the balance of power that made people uneasy.
Interesting.
So instead of the chaos that they were expecting, the workers marched peacefully.
Okay.
It was a show of discipline that really surprised a lot of people.
So it's almost like this groundswell of energy and progress.
Well, definitely.
But there's also this darker side that's emerging, right?
Yeah.
Zweig talks about this rise of nationalism and the violence that came with it.
Yeah, this is where things start to get really unsettling, right?
Yeah.
He witnesses firsthand how this aggressive nationalism really starts to take root, especially among university students.
Sure.
Imagine this. Small groups of students armed with sticks, terrorizing their fellow classmates simply because of their ethnicity or religion.
That's chilling.
It is. It's really chilling. And what's even more disturbing is that Zweig points out that the government ultimately gave in to these groups.
Right.
They appeased them rather than confronting them. And, looking back, it's a chilling foreshadowing of the influence that nationalist aggression would have on the continent.
It almost feels like a warning.
Totally.
From history.
It is. It's a warning about how easily peace and tolerance can be eroded by fear and hatred,
It's almost hard to believe that something like that could happen.
It feels incredibly relevant today, I think, when we look around the world and we see similar forces at play,
Yeah, it's a good reminder that we can't take these values for granted.
No, absolutely not.
Now, amidst all of this political turmoil that's going on, Zweig was also immersed in this incredibly vibrant cultural scene.
Oh, yeah.
He describes Vienna as this hub.
Oh, it was a hub.
Of creativity.
It was a hub of creativity, intellectual exchange, just this incredible ferment of ideas.
It's interesting how he describes his entire school class being swept up in this passion for the arts.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't just him. It was like this collective experience, It was a shared enthusiasm for music, for literature, for theater.
Yeah.
It really highlights the power of that collective enthusiasm.
Right.
And how it can shape individual destinies.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just his peers, though.
No.
He encountered some truly remarkable figures.
Oh, absolutely.
During this time.
Yeah, he was surrounded by some of the most brilliant minds of his era.
He was.
Yeah, and he had this particularly complex relationship with Theodor Herzl, the founder of the Zionist movement.
Right.
He admired Herzl's courage and vision, but he also acknowledged his personal struggles.
Interesting.
And regrets, He even mentions avoiding visiting Herzl at home.
Really?
Out of respect for his time.
Wow.
And the importance of his work.
It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes, right?
Oh, it does. It's this deep respect for the individual,
Yeah.
even those that he admired.
Right.
And that's what makes Zweig's observations so compelling.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to show the human side of these larger-than-life figures, you know?
And that human element was on full display at Herzl's funeral.
Oh, yeah.
It was this massive...
He describes a scene of chaos.
Yeah, chaos.
Thousands mourning uncontrollably.
Yeah, it was this outpouring of grief, and it really captured the impact that one person's ideas can have on the world, you know.
It's really a reminder that individuals can spark extraordinary change.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when they tap into a deep longing for something more.
Right.
Something better.
And sometimes those individuals challenge the very fabric of society.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Zweig talks about these contrasting social norms of the time, particularly when it comes to morality.
Yeah, he highlights this kind of paradox of the society that outwardly promoted very strict moral codes, but at the same time had this
whole hidden underbelly of exploitation, you know?
It's a reminder that the past is far more complex, always, than we tend to imagine.
Absolutely, yeah.
And speaking of complexities, Zweig's own journey took him beyond Vienna to cities like Berlin and Paris.
Oh, yeah. He was a restless soul, always seeking new experiences.
And what were his impressions of those cities when he went?
Well, his initial impressions of Berlin are fascinating. He found it lacking the elegance of Vienna.
Interesting.
Yeah. And he even tells this amusing anecdote about his Berlin landlady, who was very meticulous and would give him these itemized bills for even the smallest services.
Oh, wow.
Like, you know,
that's so funny.
If she had to, like, you know, sew a button back on his coat, you know, she would charge him for it. It's a funny story.
It is.
But it also highlights these cultural differences between these two cities, you know? Like, Berlin was all about efficiency and practicality. Yeah.
Whereas Vienna was more about charm and leisurely elegance.
It's interesting how even these small details can reveal so much about a culture.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And then in Paris, Zweig makes this conscious decision to avoid the romanticized Latin Quarter.
He didn't want to be caught up in all the tourist traps and the cliches.
Right.
He wanted to find a space where he could really focus on his work.
Right.
You know, so he sought out this quieter neighborhood, more conducive to his writing.
And it's almost like he was seeking a different kind of experience in each of these cities.
Oh, definitely. He was always evolving as a writer, as a person. And he wanted to engage with each city on his own terms, you know.
And it's in these cities that he encounters this range of fascinating...
Oh, yeah. He had a knack for meeting these incredible people.
Individuals. Each kind of shaping his understanding.
Yeah. Each one leaving their mark on him of the world in different ways.
Absolutely.
For instance, there's that charming story about his first meeting with Emile Verhaeren.
Oh, Verhaeren, yeah.
The Belgian poet.
The Belgian poet.
That he so admired.
Yeah, he was a huge admirer of Verhaeren's work.
And he spends ages searching for him all over town.
He does. He goes to all these different places, asking around, trying to track him down.
Only to discover that his hosts had planned this surprise lunch meeting.
They had it all arranged.
The whole time.
The whole time. Yeah, it's this delightful anecdote that captures Verhaeren's playful spirit, you know?
That's funny.
Yeah, and the warmth of their connection, you know, it's just this lovely...
And then there's Walter Rathenau.
Oh, Rathenau, yeah.
An industrialist.
Yeah, an industrialist with this hidden passion for writing.
Right, and their first phone call is amazing.
Oh, it's incredible.
Rathenau has this packed schedule.
He's a busy man.
A trip to South Africa coming up.
He's got a million things on his plate.
And he insists on meeting Zweig.
He does. He's like, no, we have to meet. I'll make time.
And they end up talking until 2 in the morning.
Yeah, they just talked all night.
Wow.
Just these two minds, you know, just completely engrossed in conversation.
It really speaks volumes about their shared intellectual curiosity.
Absolutely.
And the intensity with which they approached life.
Yeah, they were both so passionate about ideas.
It's incredible how he manages to find these moments of connection and inspiration.
Yeah.
Even as the world around him is growing.
Yeah.
Increasingly turbulent.
Yeah, it's like he's seeking out these oases of connection and creativity amidst the chaos.
Yeah,
you know?
And these relationships become even more important as Europe edges closer to that precipice of war.
Yeah, they become his lifeline, in a way.
Which brings us to 1914 and the outbreak of World War I.
The Great War.
How does Zweig describe the mood in those final days before the conflict?
It's really interesting. He describes this stark contrast between the generations. The younger generation, he says, embraced the war with this naive enthusiasm, almost like a romantic vision of what it would be.
It's so interesting because you can kind of juxtapose that against the generation that would face World War II.
Exactly.
Who I imagine had a very different take on what war actually meant.
The brutality of conflict. They had seen it firsthand.
And for Zweig, it seems like he recognizes early on that war isn't this glorious adventure.
No.
That it's really a force that dehumanizes everyone that it touches.
Yeah. And for him, that war really shattered his faith in authority. You know, in the institutions that were supposed to guide and protect society.
And did that lead to any kind of a shift in his thinking or in his writing?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, he talks about this widespread cynicism that emerged after the war.
Okay.
This disillusionment with leaders and the values that they espoused.
It seems like this disillusionment becomes a recurring theme in his work.
It does.
This idea that human progress is so fragile.
Yeah.
That we're always teetering on the edge of chaos.
And that's what makes his writing so powerful, I think.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't shy away from these difficult questions, from these anxieties about the human condition.
But amidst all this darkness, he also finds his own voice.
He does.
His own way of making sense of the world.
Yeah.
It's interesting how he describes writing his play, Jeremiah.
Yeah, Jeremiah.
As this turning point for him. This story of suffering and resilience. And he says it connected him more deeply with his Jewish identity.
It seems that through this creative process, he moves beyond just exploring emotions to a more profound engagement with the events that are shaping his world, you know?
Right.
He's wrestling with these larger themes of identity and belonging.
And this period of growth coincides with his rising literary success.
It does, yeah.
His works like Amok, Letter from an Unknown Woman, and his historical miniatures, Sternstunde der Menschheit, really resonate with a wide audience.
Yeah, his writing really starts to find its audience during this period.
And he even expresses surprise at the success of his Fouché biography and his Volpone adaptation.
He does. He's almost like he can't quite believe the impact that his work is having.
But even with this success, there's this sense of unease.
Yeah.
Like he's worried about becoming complacent, detached from those struggles that fueled his creativity in the first place.
It speaks to this kind of restlessness in his spirit, you know? Even amidst this success, he's drawn to figures like Tolstoy, who rejected worldly acclaim, you know, in favor of a simpler life.
And he even travels to Moscow for Tolstoy's centenary celebration.
He does.
Further exploring this idea of living a life of purpose and meaning.
Yeah, he's seeking out these alternative ways of being in the world.
While he's there, he observes the rapid rebuilding that's taking place in Poland.
Yeah, which is really a testament to the resilience of nations, even after devastating conflicts.
It seems like there's this glimmer of hope there.
Yeah.
That even in the face of destruction, there's this capacity for renewal.
Absolutely.
That's so powerful.
Yeah, it's this reminder that even though the world can be this dark and difficult place, there's also this persistent human spirit that keeps striving, keeps hoping.
Speaking of hope, Zweig's home in Salzburg became this haven for artists and intellectuals from all over Europe.
It was this incredible gathering place.
He drops all these names. Romain Rolland, Thomas Mann, H.G. Wells, James Joyce, Revel, Richard Strauss, Toscanini, just to name a few.
And those are just the ones we know about. I mean, can you imagine the conversations that must have taken place in those rooms?
It's almost tragic to think how quickly that would be shattered.
It is, yeah.
But even amidst this vibrant community that he's built around him, Zweig experiences this growing sense of unease.
He does.
He talks about this feeling of unsettling calm. On his 50th birthday, almost like he's wishing for something. To disrupt the comfortable stability of his life.
It's paradoxical, isn't it?
It is.
He's achieved so much, built this incredible life for himself, and yet there's this longing for something more. Something to shake things up.
It speaks to the complexity.
It does.
Yeah. Sometimes we crave stability and security. And other times we yearn for challenge. For growth, even if it means sacrificing that sense of safety. And sadly, for Zweig, that challenge would arrive in the form of a threat that would soon consume Europe. the rise of Nazism.
It's really a turning point in his story.
It is.
From an era of relative optimism to one of fear and uncertainty.
And it's through this lens, through this encroaching shadow of fascism, that Zweig's observations about the fragility of peace and the seductive allure of extremism
become even more potent, you know?
It's chilling to see how quickly things change.
It is.
The world that he knew just seems to be unraveling.
Yeah, and he describes the Nazi decree banning works by Jewish artists.
Right.
You know, like the removal of Mendelssohn's statue.
Right.
It was this deliberate attack on culture, on history, on the very fabric of society.
And this threat hits close to home when Zweig is collaborating with Richard Strauss. On their opera, Die schweigsame Frau.
The Silent Woman.
Here's this beautiful work of art that's threatened simply because one of its creators is Jewish.
Right, and what's remarkable is how Strauss responds. You know, despite his own increasingly close ties to the Nazi regime, he insists on working with Zweig.
It's really a testament to their friendship.
It is.
But it's also a reminder that even in those dark times, there were individuals who stood up for what they believed in. Zweig even notes with some amusement that the Nazis couldn't find anything objectionable.
They couldn't,
in the libretto itself.
They were looking for a reason to ban it.
Right.
But they couldn't find anything.
That's almost absurd, right?
It is. It's this regime that's so obsessed with control that they're struggling to justify censoring their most celebrated composer, you know?
It really exposes the absurdity.
It does.
Of ideological extremism.
Absolutely.
The lengths that people in power will go to silence dissenting voices.
Yeah, they'll twist themselves into knots to try to justify their actions.
Sadly, I think humor and defiance can only hold back the tide for so long. How did Zweig perceive this growing Nazi threat?
He was acutely aware of the danger. But what really struck him was the widespread complacency.
Interesting.
In Austria. A lot of people, he observed, clung to this belief that it was just a temporary situation, that allies like France and Britain would surely intervene.
That's a haunting observation, isn't it?
It is.
That we as humans have this tendency to deny uncomfortable truths. To cling to normalcy. Even as the world around us is changing.
It's human nature, I think, but it's also a reminder of the dangers of inaction.
Absolutely.
You know, of failing to recognize the warning signs.
Zweig, sensing that things are about to change irrevocably, decides to leave Austria in 1934.
He does. He moves to London.
Okay.
And it's interesting. He describes choosing a temporary flat rather than a permanent home.
Right.
Almost as if he subconsciously acknowledged the precariousness of his situation.
Wow. Yeah. He's in exile, even if it wasn't officially declared.
Yeah, he's a man without a country.
And his travels to the Americas.
Yeah.
This constant exposure to news of Hitler's aggression.
Right.
It just intensifies his anxieties. He paints this vivid picture of England those days leading up to World War II.
Yeah.
Air raid shelters being dug in parks. Just this
sense of dread.
Palpable sense of dread settling over everything.
Yeah, like a storm.
Yeah.
That's about to break.
And it's such a stark contrast to those carefree days of his youth.
It is, yeah. That world is gone.
The world of yesterday.
Yeah. It's vanished.
But amidst this growing darkness, there was still light to be found.
There was.
Especially in his friendship with Sigmund Freud.
Freud, yeah.
He speaks with such warmth and admiration.
He does.
For Freud.
Yeah.
Seeing him as a source of strength and wisdom.
Yeah, beacon.
In these turbulent times.
That's sanity.
And the relief that he expresses when Freud escapes Vienna.
Yeah.
Thanks to the efforts of Princess Marie Bonaparte.
Right.
It's palpable.
It is.
It really highlights the power of human connection.
It does.
The importance of those bonds in the face of adversity.
Yeah. And it's not just Freud's intellect that sustains him. It's his incredible strength and dignity in the face of terminal illness.
He talks about his refusal to take painkillers.
Right.
That might cloud his mind.
Yeah, he wants to remain lucid.
His determination to keep working.
To the very end.
Until his final days. It's truly inspiring.
It is. It's this refusal to give in.
To surrender.
To despair. Yeah.
There's this beautiful anecdote about Salvador Dali sketching Freud.
Oh, yeah, during one of Zweig's visits.
Capturing the essence of Freud's powerful gaze.
Yeah, even as his body.
Even as his body is ravaged by disease.
Was failing.
Yeah, it's his poignant image of the enduring human spirit.
It is.
The will to create and connect.
Even in the face of mortality.
Even in the face of mortality.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder, I think, that even in the darkest times, beauty and meaning can still be found.
Absolutely, yeah.
The world outside, though, wasn't waiting for Freud or Zweig.
No.
So summer of 1939 arrives.
Right.
The Munich Agreement lies shattered, and Hitler's true intentions are undeniable.
Yeah, that hope for a peaceful resolution, it just evaporates.
And the mood in England shifts dramatically.
Oh, absolutely. You can feel it in Zweig's writing.
Oh, yeah.
The appeasement that had dominated political discourse for so long is suddenly seen as a failure.
Yeah.
And the reality of the Nazi threat, it finally hits home.
And how does Zweig react to all of this?
He talks about this feeling of helplessness, of being caught in this tide of events that he can't control.
Right.
He describes himself as a pawn.
Wow.
In a game played by politicians, their decisions determining the fate of millions.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this realization that the world is being shaped by forces far beyond his grasp.
And that resonates even today.
Oh, absolutely. It's this timeless human experience, this tension between individual agency and the sweep of history.
It's like we're all just caught up in these larger forces.
Yeah, like leaves in the wind.
But even as he's grappling with this feeling of powerlessness, there's still this sense that he's looking for those moments of connection, those acts of defiance.
He finds solace in those small acts of resistance.
Yeah?
And those moments of human connection that kind of shine through the darkness.
And then comes the news that shatters any remaining hope for peace.
The invasion of Poland.
Germany invades Poland.
Yeah, it's the final blow.
He describes this young civil servant boasting into his room.
Just blurting out the news, this means war.
And it's like the end of an era.
It is the world of yesterday.
The world Zweig knew.
The world he knew is gone forever.
And what's striking is how he contrasts his own disbelief with the resolute acceptance of the younger generation.
Oh, that's so powerful.
Yeah.
You know, they had grown up under the shadow of war. Weary of empty promises, ready to face the threat head on.
They weren't clinging to this idea of a world that no longer existed. And as Zweig's world crumbles around him, he starts to reflect on the deeper meaning of it all.
He does.
The lessons to be learned from the collapse of an era.
Yeah, he's searching for meaning in the wreckage.
And what does he find?
Well, his memoir, The World of Yesterday, it doesn't shy away from the horrors he witnessed. But it also offers this powerful testament to the enduring human spirit, this capacity for hope and resilience, even in the face of unimaginable loss.
And he doesn't pretend to have all the answers.
No, he's not offering easy solutions.
But it seems like he's urging us to consider the forces that shape history.
Yeah, to understand the seductive allure of extremism.
The fragility of peace.
The cyclical nature of history.
And through it all, he clings to his belief in the importance of ideals.
He does.
Of striving for a better world.
Yeah.
Even when it feels impossible.
That's the key, isn't it? To never give up hope.
And it's a message that feels incredibly relevant today.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we face our own set of challenges.
We do.
Our own anxieties about the future.
Right, but Zweig reminds us that even in the darkest of times, individuals can make a difference.
Yeah, the artists and intellectuals who sought refuge in his Salzburg home. The friendships he forged.
Yeah, like with Freud. These were all acts of resistance.
Choosing connection and creation over despair.
Choosing hope over fear.
And that's perhaps the most enduring lesson of the world of yesterday.
It is.
We may not be able to control the course of world events. But we can choose how we respond to them.
We can.
We can choose hope. We can choose action. We can choose to nurture the connections that sustain us. And strive for a world that reflects our values.
Zweig himself put it best. He said, "Even from the abyss of horror, I look up again and again to the ancient constellations, comforting myself with the inherited confidence that someday this relapse will appear only an interval in the eternal rhythm of progress onward and upward."
So as we conclude our deep dive into Zweig's world, we leave you with this question. What will you do to contribute to that onward and upward progress? What sparks of hope will you nurture? What connections will you forge? What actions will you take to shape a better tomorrow?
The world of tomorrow is still being written.
And each of us has a role to play.